And just to do a quick introduction, my name is Michael Vaughn. I'm an Instructional Technologist with Teaching and Learning Technologies. And I also wanted to share a bit about the context that I bring to this particular session. So in my last position, I was part of a team that was building fully online courses with faculty. It was a very streamlined design process, so our faculty would start by working with an instructional designer. And at that point, we had a decision to make, which was, it's really challenging to be a faculty member. It takes a lot of time to grade, to provide feedback, to structure content, to find new things to share with students. How do we take that burden off? And the area where we focused on was the course design. And what I mean by that is actually getting things into Moodle. And so, as an educational technology designer in that position, I knew about user interface design and visual design and how to arrange things in a way that works for how people learn, how to keep things consistent visually across the site, how to build in instructions to minimize questions down the road. And so I would work with the faculty to then build their course. So they would build the content, I would build the course, and then teach them how to actually deliver it, give them the technical skills for delivery and not having to worry about building the course. Now, it's a slightly different situation here where you have to fill both roles. And what I'm trying to do is take my context of course building, which had to be really streamlined. Like I had to come up with some tips and tricks to make that as smooth as possible because we were working with a lot of people, and apply that to things that you can do in a reasonable way as you're building through. So some of the things that I will show today are things that I'm not going in depth with technically speaking. There would be things where you'd have to go, hey Michael, can you set up a time to talk and you show me how to do that? And that's okay with me, that's what I'm here for. And there are going to be other things where you're like, I can start doing that right now. And so I've tried to develop a little bit of a mix in there. If at any point you want to stop and ask a question, that's okay. I'm very comfortable with free-flowing sessions. The other thing is I know that the screen can be a little squished in here sometimes, so I do literally have the ability to zoom in on things. If you ever say, hey, can you zoom in on that? Yes, absolutely. So just let me know if you'd like to see something a little bit closer. So that's it. With course design in general, the reason I throw up a picture of an iceberg is typically in face-to-face courses, the tip of the iceberg is what you're doing in terms of preparation ahead of time, because you already probably feel comfortable with some of the lectures that you're delivering, the activities that you're running. A lot of your work is actually right here during the semester with face-to-face courses. It's grading things, giving feedback, responding to emails. With online, it's kind of flipped in terms of where the workload is. So a lot of the workload is actually beforehand because you're putting everything online. You're actually pre-teaching all of your class sessions before your students get there. And so that's where the workload comes in. And having worked with a lot of online faculty, it seems like the biggest time sink that goes outside of the norm that you would expect with your experiences in face-to-face, those things being grading, for example, and providing feedback to students. One of the biggest time sinks is email. It's been my experience, answering questions from students. Does that feel pretty accurate? Mm-hmm. So what I want to focus on is what are some things that you can do to answer as many questions as possible ahead of time and to at least put fail-safes in place so that when questions do come up, you don't necessarily have to spend your time with the fluffy questions that don't so much matter. You can focus more on the really important things that you want to focus on anyway. So you can do that in two ways. One is how you visually design your course, and I'll walk you through that in a little bit. But the other is to steal my favorite quote ever from Victoria Shropshire is to use Moodle as your TA, because Moodle actually does a pretty good job at filling in the TA role depending on how you set things up. So that's what I'll focus on for about the first half hour, and then we'll open up questions and go from there. Does that sound fair? Perfect. So in terms of making Moodle your TA, there are a couple of different ways you can do that. One is to make Moodle grade for you. And nearly everyone here, I'm hoping is at least familiar with the Moodle quiz functionality. Moodle can create or let you create self-grading quizzes. With the exception of essay questions, it cannot grade essay questions for you. Some people say unfortunately, but I'm okay with it. So if you are using things like multiple choice and true, false, and even short answer questions, Moodle can grade those automatically. To draw the clear line with short answer, it's because the short answer question has to be precisely the answer that you say it is. and it has to be spelled correctly and things like that. So it's not a traditional 1 to 2 sentence response. That would be an essay. So that in itself is a big time saver, but the whole reason that you really want to assess in general is to provide students with feedback on where they are with their learning. And so there are 2 really important modifications that you can make to certain or all quizzes in your course that I think make it much more powerful. And the first is to include explanatory feedback. So on a question-by-question basis, you can include explanatory feedback to show your students what they got right, and if they got it wrong, why it was wrong, and walk them through the response, or at least give them a hint as to where they could focus to improve. The other things that you could do is you could activate a feature called CBM, which stands for Certainty-Based Marking. This is starting to gather some steam in pedagogical circles. But essentially what it means is when the students answer a question, they're prompted to select an answer that they think is correct. But not only that, they're also asked to indicate how certain they are that they are correct. So not just do you know it, but how well do you know it? And it will penalize or reward them based off of their response and how certain they say they are that they're correct. So I can show you a quick example of that here. I'll just hop into a quick student role to preview this quiz. So this is a quiz that has certainty-based marking. It also has explanatory feedback, which we'll see in a minute. But this is essentially what it looks like. So we have our normal questions. It's just a normal multiple choice question. And then how certain are you? So not very, less than 2/3% sure, fairly about 2/3% sure, and then very. So I'm very certain that I'm right. I would almost say I'm absolutely certain. So if we were answering this question, I'm going to deliberately select the wrong answer here. So we'll select 30. And I'll say I'm actually very sure that I'm right. And so what's going to happen here is Moodle is actually going to end up giving me negative points. The reason being that certainty enforces a penalty. So if you're wrong, but you say, I'm very sure that I'm right, it will enforce an additional penalty on top of that, which is a very interesting bit of feedback. Now, this quiz is set up in a way that lets the students take it multiple times. They have no time limit. Also, to make sure that they're not just going, oh, I remember the answer is B, I'm going to hop right back in and put in B. I'm enforcing a delay between attempts, so they have to wait at least an hour before they go back in.
But that's what the value of that is. I mean, what value is how certain the certainty is?
So that's
what value to the student learning the class and everything?
In terms of the research, or
I mean, why have this? I guess is what I'm saying.
Why have a certainty-based marking?
Yeah.
It's an extra level of feedback to the students, and so again, it's not just do you know this.
Yeah.
It's how certain are you that you're right. Which is actually proving to be pretty effective in helping the students develop. And if anything, let's say you're a student in your course and you answer this question, you're convinced that you have this concept down, and you put in the wrong answer, you say, I'm absolutely sure I'm right, and then you find out you're completely wrong. That in itself is a wake-up call, especially from a point standpoint. And again, whenever you use certainty-based marking, I normally recommend that you let the students take multiple attempts, because you can end up with a negative point value on the quiz, depending on how many questions there are, but that's the general sense. And there's some research that we can share that would also be helpful. And I know Kim, I think we've talked about certainty-based marking before.
And you generally don't do it on a test. You do it on a developmental piece, like a quiz or problem.
It's a really excellent point. Yeah, I tend to use it, or I would tend to endorse using it more for preparation. So quizzes that you're designing almost more as a learning tool than an assessment tool, although it does function as assessment.
What is that? I'm just trying to visualize what it looks like to the student. So the student gets their feedback. Because this, I think, from the point of view of assessment, is really useful. So it's not just, the point is not to score. The point is to say you were right or wrong, and if you were wrong, you thought you were right.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it does draw a context. This quiz was worth 5 points. You can see that I actually lost 10 on this one. And I probably should have gone through as a full-blown student. It will let me. But this was a preview. Let's see if I can take this again. Yeah, I'm gonna have to wait to reattempt the quiz. But I selected the wrong answer, so I didn't get the points, and then I ended up losing points on top of that. The other thing that I can do is I can actually go into,
There's a little Vegas quality to this.
Yeah.
it is a little bit of a gamble. I can actually show you the question itself, so the students can, or you can see what type of feedback the students can get. Sorry, I should have thought ahead about the fact that there are. Let me just open this up in Chrome right now. Apparently that's not going to be very helpful. I'll paste the feedback into this box here. So if the students had gotten the answer wrong and they were reviewing their attempt, they would be able to see the score like we just did a moment ago. But this is also the feedback that I chose to enter in, explaining why it was wrong. And it walks them through step by step how everything worked. And truthfully, the problem that I put in there was, it was just one of those kind of trick questions that's designed to look a little misleading. But this is what the students would see when they submit their test attempt and they review to find out why they didn't get the score that they expected. So the built-in feedback, which just saves a little bit on those emails like, why did I get this grade? Why is this wrong? Things like that. If you take the time to build in, especially for some of the key concepts ahead of time, at least 1 or 2 questions in a format like this, can definitely cut down on some of the questions there. So that's one of the suggestions that I have. Are there any questions over this? Yes.
So what is the research showing about the value for the students to return to that, as far as having the points tied into it, especially if they can take it again anyway and improve their score? How does this help reinforce the feedback nature of it, rather than just say straight feedback?
For the certainty-based marking, is that what we're talking about?
With the points, yeah, the certainty.
Okay. That one, I would have to send some literature to review a little bit. Long story short, it's just an extra layer of feedback. It's kind of like a new layer on the onion.
It would motivate. I would think that it might have a motivating effect, so that I can improve my score by getting the right answer, not by chance, but actually feeling confident about my answer. I mean, that to me would be to get them to take it again, as opposed to, oh, I'm okay, I did all right, I got the score right.
Because a lot of these, if you get it right, but you were not sure you got it right, you don't get the full credit for the question also.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, having that confidence when you take the test,
So it
if
motivates.
you know how to do it properly, then you know you're going to be, you do it more efficiently, more quickly, it builds a ton. I think it's that motivating factor. And somebody who's not that motivated, then maybe they'll just go and accept the grade they have and not worry about it, I suppose, but.
It incentivizes preparation.
Yeah.
But if it's incentivized through the grade, and we give them the feedback that has the answer, you have to just go back and then retake it and get the full credit anyway?
Well, but
They could, and that is part of the embedded purpose with this, is to give them multiple attempts. And again, I don't know if we mentioned it earlier, but I wouldn't really recommend using this on a full-blown, large assessment, because because of the penalties that can come along with it could be pretty rough. But with this one, where they're allowed to take it multiple times, and the way that I work around kind of them jumping right back in, and I shared this maybe a couple minutes ago, but you can enforce a delay between attempts.
All right.
So even though they can take it multiple times, they have to wait maybe an hour or a day before they can do that again. And so it does cut down that, oh, I remember the answer's B, I'm gonna go put B real quick. So that's one thing right there that you can do.
Okay. Let's see, from a design perspective, what's to prevent a student from going in, answering everyone correct with full confidence, getting the right answer, writing it down, coming back in an hour and answering it all correct? Doesn't it incentivize it then?
well, that's my question, and I don't want to go too far down a path if it's too much
Yeah,
of a tangent, but
sorry to get too stuck
can
up.
you randomize the questions? Because that's always kind of my bugaboo, is that I'm going to come back in an hour and take the exact same set of questions, so I do write it down, as opposed to,
You can randomize the selection, you can randomize the order, and you can randomize the answers.
so
Yep.
I'm going to come back in an hour and if I get the exact same questions, then I'm good, but otherwise I actually have to learn it. So it's really it really promotes learning.
I see.
It's
Gotcha.
kind of cool.
And so those are just two simple modifications you can make, especially if you're already creating pre-quizzes that you can use. These are just simple ways to, again, kind of, I don't want to say spice it up, that seems a little cliche, but to cut down some of those questions of why am I wrong, and it just kind of, I think it helps you again from the learning perspective of just being able to give the students an option to figure out how close they think they are to being right. So those are two features that I really do love.
I think you're right, though. I mean, it really incentivizes them to really learn the material, because if you the maximum points is about not just getting it right, but also making darn sure you're right, then you're probably going to prepare more, especially if you only take it once. If you only take it once, then you're really going to dig down. It seems, I mean, that makes sense for me.
All right, if there aren't any more questions, I'll jump onto it next. Perfect. The other thing that you would normally ask a TA to help out with would be grading, right? And grading can be a little cumbersome in the online environment, especially when you're trying to go student by student, and especially when you're trying to grade things like a discussion forum, for example. And thankfully, we actually do have access to a built-in tool that is not really publicized, that is very easily overlooked, that can actually save you a ton of time, specifically when it comes to grading assignments and discussion forums in particular, and that's Joule Grader. So a handful of you, I do see some head nods, but this is a really great tool. It's only going to get better when we upgrade to the next version of Moodle over summer. At that point, we'll get inline previews of PDFs, as well as, if things hold up, annotation features for those PDFs. So you can annotate over documents as you're grading them, which would be exceptional. But Joule Grader, again, it's a little buried. It's going to be in your settings menu in your course, down toward the bottom, which is why no one ever sees it, really. It's buried all the way down here. Then it's called Joule Grader, and no one knows what Joule is, so just so you can tell all of your friends, Joule is basically the branded software of Moodle Rooms, who hosts Moodle for us. So they add their own extra layer of content in here. So Joule reports are actually Moodle Room reports, if you want to think about it that way. They let you run different reports on your course. But Joule Grader is my favorite when it comes to saving time, especially for creating discussion boards. Let me hop into, this one's a discussion board, and be a good example that wouldn't be upset with me.
Amy Hogan?
Not sure if she did. No, I looked at Megan's earlier. So right now you do see Dan's post, but that's because Megan had responded to it. But this is what it looks like. So it is a different interface. You are technically still in your course when you're in Joule Grader. It's taking over the screen so that you get as much real estate as possible to work. And all the basic grading features are going to be here. So you can enter in the grade. You can put in your overall feedback to the student that they would be able to see once the grade's been submitted. If you were using a rubric or a marking guide, there would also be a link to it here, so you could load that and use it in lieu of just entering a grade in. If you were grading an assignment and you had the option to upload feedback files, there would be a field here where you can do that too. So everything's really built in. If you want more space, you can always just drag this left or right. And if I don't want to see Dan's posts, I can just click Show Only Users Posts, and it just shows hers, and it cuts out the clutter. So you do lose the context there, but it might be a more streamlined view for seeing.
This is for
some of her
grading her
posts.
post.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so this way you don't have to dig through discussion boards to try and find everybody's posts and figure out, oh, they did this, but they replied to this student way over here, and then they replied to me back here. You don't have to go everywhere. Like, it's all in one place with Joule Grader. So especially if you're running online discussions, this is going to save you a ton of time. Whenever you're done, all you have to do is enter in your grade and feedback and just save and grade next, and it just cycles right through. You can even use the drop-down menus to switch between different assignments and discussion boards and different students, or just save and grade next, and it will take you to the next person.
And where can you view the grades?
As a student, or
No, as the person implementing the course, where can you view all the student grades? Is there a grade book?
There is. Okay, so let me return to the course and get out of Dual Grader here. In the settings block, there's also the grades, which will take you to the grader report, which you can see some basic feedback if it's been entered or just the grades.
And that will take the data from Dual Grader.
It will. So everything you put in there goes into here.
How does that get archived?
The grades. Everything's saved as part of course record. We also keep grade history logs for 6 months for students who are removed from a course. So if you have a student who is in there for maybe 2-3 weeks, they decide to drop partway through the semester, and maybe there was a mistake and they actually should have been in the course, you can add them back in that time period, and their grades will still show back up, which is good. They won't appear here in the grade book. They'll be within the graded items themselves. So they'll be within, if you look in the quiz attempts that they took, it will show up. You will see their grade there. You'll be able to re-enter it here. But this is all saved as part of course records. So when there's a course backup made, it includes all the grades and grade history information. And every course, if it's been accessed within the last 24 hours, gets a backup. Did that hit?
Are they saved in perpetuity? So if I want, like, let's say I work on assessment, and let's say a department wants to look at some aspect that they've graded in here as for their assessment of learning outcomes for a program, would they be able to go back and look at that history, or?
They would.
Okay.
Now, that does bring a bigger question that right now we're proposing a policy to ATAC to be floated up to the academic community about how long courses should live in Moodle itself. Now, we would hang on to the backups for a good deal of time, but we do have to be mindful of bloat and taking courses that aren't still being used out of the system eventually. And I don't want to go in details with that because we're still getting feedback on our proposal, but we were proposing about 2 years in the system, 4 years overall.
Okay.
And we would just store the backups after that 2-year period and restore if there was a request. So again, that went a little off topic, but back around, Dual Grader can save you just a ton of time. The other thing that I would recommend you take a look at, especially if you're going to be using the assignment tool, are 2 newer features that we picked up about a year ago. The first is the offline grading worksheet, and the second would be uploading feedback files. And Scott, I think you did a little bit of work with this. It can be finicky, so this is going to be one of those situations where you go, hey Michael, let's meet about this. But just to explain, you now have the ability when you have an assignment to download a spreadsheet that will let you enter in grades and feedback, and then upload the spreadsheet back, and it automatically assigns it to every student.
Say that again. Say that again.
So what you would do is you would download a spreadsheet like this
Yeah.
as part of the assignment, and this isn't all of it. It actually goes over a little bit. I just made the text a little bit larger, but I know it's still very tiny on the projector screen. So what you would do is you would download this spreadsheet, you would enter in the grades for each student, you would enter in feedback comments, then you upload this back into Moodle, and it automatically gives them their grade and their feedback, which just saves a ton of time.
That's-
The original grader was you were going student by student by student by student, and now you can have this open in the background while you download their documents, and you look at them and you go, okay, this is the grade, this is my feedback. Now you can just enter it in one place in the spreadsheet, you save it when you're done, you upload it back, and now you have 2 really good things working for you. 1, you just saved a ton of time. 2, you have a documented record of what you put in case something catastrophic happened in Moodle.
And you're putting that
backups.
feedback into that column that doesn't quite show there. Feedback comments, I think that is.
Yes.
That's where you're putting the feedback.
And so my recommendation, if you do go this route, is to make this column much wider and to wrap the text in it, because otherwise you're probably going to have a very annoying time in Excel, because it's just going to keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling.
How did you open this? How did you get to this?
So that's going to be one of those meeting things, because it's kind of a technical process on how to get there, but I promise it's pretty straightforward. It's just if I showed you today, it would be one of those things that just vanishes into the ether by the time you leave. But this is just 2 settings that you enable when you set up your assignments that will let you use this, okay, and let you also upload feedback files. In terms of uploading feedback files, I don't have a great example to show you what it looks like in practice. I would actually, if we were doing a consultation, I would show you what it would look like in one of your old courses where you had an assignment. But what it lets you do is it zips up into one file all of your student submissions. You download it to your computer, you unzip it, you go through, you do track changes and all that. And then you select all those files, you create a new zip out of them, upload it back to Moodle, and it automatically assigns it to every student. So it knows whose is whose, and it even knows whether or not you changed the original document. So if you didn't give somebody feedback, you didn't change their document, it's not going to give them a new one. That's the exact same thing. So it's actually smart enough to know that. And again, instead of going student by student by student, you can do a workflow that works for you, that you're used to, which is grading everything at once and then putting all the grades in.
So is it automatically emailing the students with their comments?
They'll get those notifications regardless. Whenever you put in a grade with Moodle, they're set up to get those notifications unless they change their settings. So
Where are
yes,
they reading their comments then?
they can go into the assignment itself,
Okay.
and they can see some comments when they check their grades.
Oh,
and
right.
the grade.
Okay.
They get an email that says, Dan has given feedback on this, they click on that link and it goes to the feedback.
That's right, okay, thank you, thank you.
So those are really great assignment features there, just saving more and more time. Again, if you want to learn about how to set that up, just let me know, and we will set up an appointment. I can walk you through it, only because it can be a little particular. And Scott, I think you had some experience uploading the feedback files where it was being picky. You have to do it in a particular way. It's not complicated, but it is specific. So that would be something to take a look at. All right. Any questions before we move on? Perfect. Is this along the lines of what you were hoping for? Because again, I am going to open up to questions, and I want to make sure that I'm hitting what you're looking for here. Because we're about to move into some visual design things that you can do.
Maybe one more question about the dual grader. And does it work with, if I'm making a test, and it'll let me do, I don't know if you can do a setting like this where I usually have some essay questions and then multiple choice. And I'd rather be able to grade each essay question for all the students, essay question 1, and all the students, essay question 2. But what I have to do is load up each student, and it doesn't make much sense for me to move on to the next person without just grading that whole person.
You're absolutely right. And has anyone else run into that problem with essay questions on Moodle where they're really cumbersome to grade? Have you gone through that process before?
Or short answer or something like that.
Just like you were explaining, it's really cumbersome to go through the quiz. It's obnoxious. You literally have to load student by student. You end up opening 3 different windows just to get to one student's reply and enter in a grade and response, which is why I love what I'm about to show you so much. If you go to the technology wiki and look up essay questions, I wrote an article called The Easy Way to Grade Essay Questions in Moodle.
Oh, cool.
And if you follow these instructions, what it will actually do is it will load up a page that looks something like this, but it'll go question by question. I should zoom in on that for you. It will go question by question, so you can grade all the students for question 1, all the students for question 2, and it will just show them all on the same page if you want. And you just go through and you type in your comments, their grade, scroll all the way down, and you save it. And you just move on to the next one. And it saves a ton of time. It's one of those features that's buried, that no one knows about. And this alone, it was a revelation. Whenever I show it to people who have graded a lot of essay questions, it changes their lives in a very positive way. So.
And this will work kind of on, so if you have essay questions, and you have mixed questions where some that are multiple choice that grade them, that's great.
Yep. So it breaks it down by question, which is really nice.
Might use more essay questions now.
You should. They're great.
Yeah,
They're very good.
Yeah, I like them.
All right, let me just make sure I'm on track here. Hop into here. So, in terms of other questions that you might get from students, a lot of times they're asking where things are, especially in an online course, like where is this located, where's this thing that we're supposed to be doing, and a lot of that can be mitigated by creating a cohesive, consistent structure for your course. And I've gone ahead and done that in a template that I've been working on. The school that I was at was a Quality Matters school, and that may be a brand new term, to some of you, but it's a faculty-developed and maintained program that started in Maryland. It was originally grant-funded, and now it's a full-blown organization. And they've developed a rubric to measure the quality of the design of an online course. So it has nothing to do with the delivery, but it starts with measurable course objectives, and then making sure that you've done everything that you can to make the experience as positive as possible for the students. So things like including support resources in terms of the lower level things, but also things like making sure your assessments are aligned to your objectives, that your learning materials are aligned to your objectives, that the course is accessible to the blind, visually and physically impaired. And so that is the context for the template that I've been working on that has that structure. So as you would go through here, this is using the weekly format, just because I find dates to be very helpful when you're scrolling through. I'm using the heading for each topic to explain the weekly learning outcomes and to give a very quick overview for the students, but it's also set up so that they would have to click into each section to see that content. So that's partly to eliminate the scroll of death, right? Which even here, this is just set up as a basic 15-week course, and you can see there's a lot of scrolling. So if you do have a student who's using an assistive device because maybe they don't have full use of their hands, or if they're using a screen reader to navigate your site, a lot of scrolling is killer. It's terrible. And even people who do have full use of their faculties hate scrolling that much because it's hard to find things, right? So you would have to actually click on the first week to see the content for that. And it does include the top section of the course, which I've chosen to put things like the syllabus and the getting started guide for students at the very top so that they always see those things. But a weekly breakdown would be something like this. And so again, we have the dates at the top, and then the outline, the objectives. Then there would be a broken out overview. This would be for every week so the students know what's expected of them and when. I would be posting resources in a section like this, so anything they're watching, reading, and then activities, so anything that they're doing, especially anything they're doing for a grade, would be down here. And every week would be structured this way. And so there's no question about where things are or what we're going to be doing, because even that overview would look something like this. So the introduction, text or video. Video is preferable, but text also works. The outcomes, and then what they're actually doing. So they have it laid out for them on a page. Again, this cuts down on so many questions, it's unbelievable. But it does take a lot of time to do ahead of time. So that's, once you get the initial time sink out of the way and you do this and you invest in it, you can reuse this and just make minor modifications moving forward. And that'll save some time too. It looked like there was a question.
That first, you clicked on a date that was on the first page.
Mm-hmm.
I can see some of those are labels and some of those are files. What was that you clicked on that opened up the...
That was the topic itself. So most Moodle courses are set up to show all topics on one page.
Mhm.
And that's why it just scrolls and scrolls and scrolls. And all I did was I set mine.
To topic rather than folder?
So this is this is weekly view, which is the same as topic view, but with weeks instead of topic 1, 2, 3, just for context. And I set it so that it would only show one section per page, so you have to deliberately click on what you want to see before you can see it. What's really nice, and I'll show you what this actually looks like with real content in just a minute or two, but right now it says page 1. That's because I used the page resource to create something within that week. But if I add in assignments or quizzes or lessons or anything like that, it's all going to be listed here to let the students know how many of what is in there. So there are 2 quizzes in here, there's an assignment, there's 3 URLs. So they know what type of content is going to be in there. But what I really like about this is, again, it just adds that consistent structure, and it helps you when you're trying to organize the course, because one thing that I know Sherry and other folks will reinforce with you is the idea of just chunking out content into modules or units or something digestible for the students that is coherent. And this really supports that. So being able to consistently go through and know where things are and what things would look like. The other thing that I found to be really helpful in terms of cutting down on questions is to add a course question and answer forum. I'm willing to bet a couple of you already do this. But in case you don't, this is something that I've set up in the past as something that is open and just for the students. So we even worked in the instructions where we let them know the faculty wouldn't necessarily be checking it all the time. They might check it once a week, they might not check it at all. This is for students to answer student questions. If they run into anything, they can post it here. And you can actually force a subscription so that every student in the course is subscribed to it. They'll get a daily email if someone posts in there, just like when you post in the assignments or the announcements forum. But this is just a great way to help with some of those early questions. And again, since it's in this top section, any topic that they're in my course, they'll still see this at the top. So they have fast access to it. There's some other features in here that do help out a little bit too, but they don't necessarily relate as much to the course design. One that I find to be really helpful is your contact information would go right here. This is in an HTML block, which just lets me put in some text that I can stylize. So I can put in phone number, email, I can put in a link to my Elon bio if I wanted to do that, or maybe a LinkedIn page. But that's pretty much all there is to it. So just ready access, and that shows up on all the course pages in this general area, or when they go into one of the topic pages, should also show up there. So they have ready access to your information.
So, detailed question, but to create the weekly piece down below where you have the week, so that you have a second layer of web page, how did you actually execute that? What did you click on to create?
And so I can show you that really quickly. This is just in the settings for the course.
Okay.
And we have these forms now. What you're looking for is course format.
Okay.
And again, I selected weekly format and show one section per page.
Okay.
And that's all there is to it. So by default, it's actually going to show everything. But if you do show one section per page, it's only going to show what's in the overview for the topic, which, you know how in your topics you have that little standalone pencil icon, and you can use that to change the name of the topic, and that's what that is. So that will always show up on the home page. Like this will always show up because that's part of the topic description. But all these other things, these are just labels. If I turn on editing so you can see the behind the scenes. So these are just labels that I've indented to create some visual hierarchy there to make it a little bit more obvious to the students as to where things are.
So for a summer course, you would recommend doing the 3 or 4 weeks, and within each of those weeks, the 5 days on the next page. Flip through.
And that's an excellent question, and it's ultimately up to you in terms of how you structure your course. The reason that I like to lean toward weeks for the course format in Moodle is because a lot of times they're going to be skimming by date. That's what they're looking for, I think. Even though I like breaking things up by modules personally, like when I worked with some English faculty on a course, it was 4 different modules, and module 1 was, we would say, weeks 1 through 4. So the students knew weeks 1 through 4 we would be working on that module. And then what we did was, that was in Blackboard, so it was a little bit of a different philosophical approach to an LMS, but it would be like broken into different chunks along those lines. So I just like the weekly for that reason. I also I recognize that some of you have modules that are going to be split between weeks, and that happens too, so it's ultimately up to you in terms of how you want to do that. One quick note on dates is I would recommend, let's say you do have a unit, let's say unit 1 starts week 1 and ends halfway through week 2. I would say something in the description that ends on Wednesday of week 2. For example, don't put in dates manually ever, because you are setting yourself up for a headache. And what I mean by that is if you reuse this course again next year, you're going to have to change that date. It won't be changed automatically for you, and if you stick with things like Wednesday in week 2, you're already good to go. You don't even have to worry about it. So that has been a huge time saver. Does that help? And again, I can show you what this looks like with actual content in it in just a moment. But the other thing that I wanted to show while we're in this course, I don't have it fully set up here, but one thing I normally try and recommend is adding a 0 week to your course. And so that's basically a fake week where you walk the students through some of the common tools that you're going to be using. And that's where you start out. Now this is going to be really hard to do in summer because you have a very compressed timeline. But something that could be done in a day. And that kind of cuts down those, how do I do this type of questions? Like, how do I take a quiz? Like, how does this work? What's going on? Where you just walk them through what it's going to look like. And given the time crunch, one thing that you could do in place of that is something that I recommend doing anyway, which is adding a course introductory screencast. I know that you've probably talked about screencasting already, I'm guessing, at some point. Just in case anyone's unfamiliar with screencasting, it's like taking a video recording of what's going on your computer screen, and it also records your audio narration at that time. So you can demo things in your course. You can take people on a tour of your course. And I'll actually show you one that I put together with some faculty when I was working on one of those courses. It won't be the highest quality in the world, but it's just over 2.5 minutes. It walks the students through where all the major areas of the course are, and where they can go to learn more about the expectations for the course. So I may not play the whole thing, but I'll play enough to kind of see what was covered in there.
Welcome to College Learning 2, English 2111. As you begin to explore this course site, please take the time to click on the links to see where they take you. You should begin with the Start Here area, which is accessible from the Home area or from the course menu on the left side of your screen. The Start Here area contains all of your course materials, including the syllabus, schedule, course text information, and relevant university policies. The Start Here area also includes support materials and information to ensure your computer is prepared to handle an online course. Your instructor's contact information, as well as a brief biography, is available as a link in the course menu. Their contact information is also available in your syllabus. You can access your course content from the Lessons module link in the course menu. You can also access it from the home page.
Java always wants
This course is comprised of several modules. Each module focuses on one of the course writing assignments and contains a series of weekly lessons that will build toward that assignment. The weekly lessons contain assigned readings, course videos, discussion and writing skills posts, and other relevant course activity.
I'm going to pause it here just because this plays into one of the things I'm about to share, and I also don't want to bore you with this video. So one of the other suggestions, especially, and the veterans of online teaching can back me up here, one thing you should definitely do is over-explain all of your directions, because you have no context when it comes to an online classroom. The reason for that is, right now I can put this up on screen and I can explain it to you, and you can ask me questions that come up if you don't get it, or if there's something else that you want to know that's related to it, and you lose some of that online. So over-explaining also cuts down on questions, which is why, in this course, for example, the first week they were going to be doing a discussion board post. And this was just an introductory assignment. This was kind of that week 0 idea where they're really just introducing themselves to the class, and I think they were creating a short PowerPoint to also introduce themselves because they were going to be expected to do presentations. But we included full-blown instructions on how to actually post to a discussion board, including links to documents and videos, just really laying it all out there. And later weeks, this wasn't included. It was expected by week 2 or 3 that they would know how to do this, or at least where to go to know where to do this. But at the very beginning, we over-explained everything just to make sure that they had the context that they needed and the answers that they needed, so they didn't have to wait. If you ever want to see the whole thing, just let me know. I'll share that with you. Let's see, getting started guide. I'm a very big advocate of including a getting started guide for students, and this is actually not so much for the course content, but more for the course in general. So this is where you include something like a course tour and explanation of the course structure. So here I've broken down the course structure for the course that I'll show you in a minute that has some of this content in it. Includes some other information in here, so online course communication. This is more of an etiquette statement than anything else. Information about where to find support. And what I've done is, to save myself time, I've taken a screenshot of the support block in the course, and I've told them where it is. And the reason for that is there may be things that are specific to your discipline that they will need support with. So if it's an English course, I would expect that you probably are emphasizing them using services at the Writing Center, if they can, or looking at Belk Library services. So those might go to the top of the list. And all this means is I can point them to something, and then I can just change it there, and I don't have to worry about coming back here and changing my list every single time I add something new. So it's one less place I have to be. I also went ahead and put in some information about the online bookstore. There's more that could go in here, but these are great places to start. The other thing that you can do is you can control the release of certain content in Moodle. So I normally like to put a dependency on the Getting Started guide that the syllabus itself is not available to students until they read through every page of this. And they might just click through every single one, but at least like they will know that they aren't able to see the syllabus because they haven't read the Getting Started guide.
And how is that managed? There's something in Moodle that records the
It's just
the page?
It would be an availability setting or an access setting on the syllabus itself. So I can show you what it looks like to a student. So I haven't read the Getting Started guide. I'm in this course as a student. So it actually puts under the syllabus that it's not available until the Getting Started activity is complete. So I would have to go through all that. And that was a setting that I put on the syllabus itself.
We put that on anything?
Yes, you can.
Like for instance, if they haven't opened the reading assignment, they can't take the quiz on it?
Exactly.
Not that they would do that.
But yes, absolutely. Which is why I love those dependency settings, because you could even do things like until they get a passing grade on an assignment or an assessment, the next module won't
I
open up
don't
for
use
them.
much of those, that's great.
How does Moodle know whether the student has read the Getting Started pages?
It doesn't know if they've read it, but it doesn't know if they've looked at it. So again, I could open
So
this
the
up. and-
availability has some kind of phrase that relates to the activity the student has had on the Moodle.
Right, like right now, I'm literally just clicking through these pages, and Moodle is registering that.
What does the availability read on the syllabus?
And so now the syllabus is available to me.
Yeah,
think it means
what
the
is
setting of the
what is the
syllabus.
setting on the syllabus,
Okay.
the availability setting?
So I can actually show you that in here, not back. So let me add the settings on this. It's gonna be toward the bottom. The restrict access settings, you can tie it in here. Which I think, did I do it in here? I thought I did it in here. But you can build out dependencies so that things aren't released until that's done. If it's something that's ungraded, like the book, which I should have remembered, you can use a tool called the Personalized Learning Designer. That's another one of those. Michael, please meet with me and we'll go through that together. Because that sets up a series of rules where the students do this under these conditions and this happens as a result. So that was I forgot that was a Personalized Learning Designer rule. If you want to see any of this in action, what you can do on the Moodle homepage. These questions have been great along the way, and I apologize because I realized we're not going to have time for a traditional Q&A time. If you come to the homepage and search for hybrid showcase, there's going to be a link to the hybrid showcase course, which is the template that I've been showing you, but with some demo content. I have no idea why that's making that noise. So anyway, so when you click on this, you'll be prompted to enroll yourself in the course. You can unenroll yourself at any time, but you'll be able to see what that would look like. Which, to give you an overview, kind of looks like this. And you can see, and this is what I mentioned earlier, it'll show you how many of each content type is in here. And when I go in, I can see an overview, I can see the content, activities. And there are other things that you can do. I think we're actually doing pretty well on to share. The last thing that you could do that can help out in terms of helping the students understand where they are is to use completion tracking. Again, that's going to be one of those sit-down conversations. But you can see these check marks, and that means I've actually looked at that content. It could be used formally, but it's also a great informal way for the students to know how far along they are. So, here I am as a student in the course, and I can see that I've completed 2 of the 8 available activities. Sometimes completing an activity is just as simple as looking at it, like that getting started guide. Otherwise, it could be things like, I have to get at least a 75 on the second assignment for that to be considered complete. So ideally, we would want it to be much higher than that, but beggars can't be choosers, I suppose. But that's pretty much the bulk of what I had wanted to show. And again, I know we're running, I think we're actually over by a minute, so I apologize for that. But did you have any questions that I could answer so we don't have things going unresolved? Ironically, I ran over on a session about saving time.
I just have one quick question, I don't know if it's going to be of interest to others. So if you're using a course that you have used in the past, how do you kind of bring it in? How do you use the same materials?
You mean on top of a template like this, for example? Or
So if someone taught an online course last summer and they want to use similar materials,
gotcha.
how do they get started with that?
So there are instructions for that on the technology wiki if you search for copying or importing a course,
Okay.
but what you're looking for in the settings block is this import link.
Okay.
So you would go into your new course
Uh-huh.
and use import to pull in the content from your old course.
Okay,
And it'll let you pick and choose what you do and don't want.
okay,
Any course that you have still live on Moodle, you can draw stuff from.
okay, great. And then the other question I had was this idea of randomizing with quizzes. So I imagine if someone's teaching the same course and you might want to use the same quiz again, it probably makes sense to randomize the order of the questions as well as the
Mhm.
responses within that.
Mhm.
Is that considered the best practice or the appropriate practice around that, or?
I like to recommend that. Yeah.
And how do you do that?
That might be one of those sit-down conversations.
Okay.
Actually, if you
It's just the setting in the quiz module itself and the setting under each question. It's
Okay.
just like answers in random order or not,
Okay,
and
or
there's,
questions in random order.
Sarah and I put together a great article about creating quizzes on the technology wiki, and it breaks down every
I
single
did see
setting. And it can be a little overwhelming at first because it's more of an informational piece than an instructional one, but it'll highlight some of the settings. And
so if you had done that the first time you created your course and then you imported that course, you'd be good to go
I would think.
now,
Right.
because it would
It should,
automatically.
yeah.
But it's, to randomize, you mean?
Yes.
That's really, even if you didn't do it before.
Yeah, it's critical to do it now, obviously.
And easy.
Yeah, very fun.
Thank you.